One day, a Pokemon phone game called Pokémon GO was announced. It would be a game where you could travel across the real world to catch fictional monsters known as Pokemon. Prior to this, people could still catch those fictional monsters, but only within the worlds inside their portable Nintendo video game cartridges. This Pokémon GO game would change things up a lot. But I think this game has been in our imaginations for quite some time already. Pokémon GO is the combination of two things that Pokémon fans have asked for but never got until now. This is the Pokémon game with all the regions. It has every region. Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, Alola, and all the regions we don't even know the names of yet. Also, Pokémon GO is the first official Pokémon MMORPG. Now, I don't play a whole lot of MMORPGs, because you need a lot of time to consume into just one of them. I used to play RuneScape and I was alright at it, but for me, Pokémon GO is my MMORPG. But unlike most MMORPGs, Pokémon GO is dangerous. Just like Sword Art Online, if you die in the game, you die in real life too. There have been deaths, some in Japan, some in America, possibly elsewhere, but I'm not sure about that. There have also been numerous examples of injury. But because this game takes place in real life, the overworld has stereoscopic 3D, at least for most people. Although the 3D effect wouldn't work for my friend Jake, who is blind in one eye. Also, for most people it's in full color during the day, but for my friend Cameron, who's colorblind, it's in black and white. In my previous videos, I've been merging the ideas about what is fictional and what is actually real. I've used primitive computer animation to insert Pokemon into live-action scenes. But there's one video in particular that I made in 2011 which, upon re-examination, looks very much like what Pokemon GO has become. In that video, I went to the real-world Statue of Liberty, and while I was there, I caught the Pokemon Victini, which lives in the fictional version of the Statue of Liberty. I'll probably never know for sure, but I wonder if my video had any influence on the release of Pokemon GO. I probably wouldn't think it did, except that, for some reason, the video got 3 million views. And due to the butterfly effect, even something small can change big things. Most people see the connection between Pokemon GO and Google's April Fool's joke from 2014, and yet this joke may have been put into place to test the reaction that Pokemon GO would have as a game. Prior to that, Pokemon GO's creator, Niantic, created its first augmented reality game, Ingress, in 2013, and it's said that the director of the Pokemon Company, Mr. Ishihara, was an active player of Ingress. He's the person in charge of Pokemon products, including spin-off games like Pokemon GO. What if, prior to the release of Ingress, one of the 3 million viewers of my video shared the video with Ishihara? Could it have planted the seed of the idea that would become Pokemon GO? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe I invented Pokemon GO. Maybe I didn't. But at the very least, I was playing Pokemon GO before it was cool, while it was cool, and after it stopped being cool. Before the game came out, we were told it would come out sometime in July. Info on Pokemon GO was leaking online, and it came to my attention that my iPhone 4 would be insufficient to play Pokemon GO. But I was reluctant to upgrade to my second smartphone. My iPhone 4 was the last phone that Steve Jobs approved of. But there was a surprise upload on July 6th, and Pokemon GO was here. I used my dad's phone for a few minutes, caught some Pokemon, ran around for a bit, went back home. It was exciting, but I didn't know how popular it would become. On the next day, July 7th, I considered starting Final Fantasy X, but instead I bought a phone that worked for Pokemon GO. I heard a rumor that people were walking around downtown like zombies, staring at their phones. I decided then and there that I would go there the next chance I could. It was true. Basically everywhere you looked, people were playing the game. There were so many people playing that night that I couldn't even log in. This was a big problem in the early days. I decided to go home and wait for the daytime when less people would be playing. It seems that even Niantic didn't expect so many people to be playing Pokemon GO. It took them a little while to get the servers working, but they did. I decided to go all in when it came to Pokemon GO. But this ruined my chance to beat 100 video games in a year. I had previously played Mario and Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story, Partners in Time, Superstar Saga, Assassin's Creed Jack the Ripper DLC, Katamari Damacy, Rain, The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes, Feel the Magic, Mighty Switch Force for Wii U, Spyro the Dragon, Touch My Katamari, Rhythm Heaven for Game Boy Advanced, We Love Katamari, Rhythm Heaven DS, Avatar The Burning Earth, Avatar Into the Inferno, The Legend of Korra, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, Super Monkey Ball Step and Roll, The Last Airbender, the movie, the game, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire for PS2, Order of the Phoenix for PS2, The Half-Blood Prince for PS2, Monsters Incorporated for PS2, Rhythm Heaven Fever, Monsters Inc., Scream Arena, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for PlayStation 1, Ratatouille for GameCube, Dr. Mario for Game Boy, Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Fates Birthright, Conquest, Assassin's Creed Chronicles India, Fire Emblem Fates Revelation, Dr. Mario for NES, Mario Kart 7, Mario Kart 6, Mario Kart 2, Mario Kart 5, Mario Kart 3, Mario Kart 1, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for PC, Prisoner of Azkaban for PC, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for PlayStation 2, Quidditch World Cup for GameCube, Mario Kart 4, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for PlayStation 1, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2 for PlayStation 3, Toy Story 3 for PlayStation 3, Mario Kart 8, Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, Super Mario RPG, Gravity Rush, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus, Midnight, Midnight 2, Land It Rocket, The Perplexing Orb, Funky Physics, Toontanks, Me and My Katamari, Ratatouille for PSP, Beautiful Katamari, Up for the Xbox 360, Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, Pokken Tournament, Star Fox Guard, Mario is Missing, Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time, Pokémon Mystery Dungeons Explorers of Darkness, and Rhythm Heaven Megamix. By the end of the year, I had only beaten 80 games in 2016. It's so embarrassing, man. But since people started caring about Pokémon again, which is my speciality, I changed my focus to doing as best as I could in the game. Weird stuff started happening all around the world, and it often went on the Muggle news. There were people finding dead bodies, getting mugged, getting shot, upsetting solemn locations, and falling off cliffs. And people were getting hit by cars, too. But of course, that's to be expected. Whenever I mentioned that I was playing Pokémon, people kept saying they were worried about me. But I assured them that I was only half as stupid as the players who made it to the news. There were many references to Pokémon, not only in my town, but basically everywhere people were playing. Target stores turned those round things outside into Pokeballs, but I was busy catching Pokémon at the time. By the time I got to my local Target, weeks later, the decal was gone, but I could tell it had been there. My goal was to obtain a new Pokémon every day, until I couldn't. And then it was to catch any Pokémon every day, until I forgot to leave my house on January 11th, 2017. I wore my Ancient Mew shirt, and a lot of people liked it. I don't blame them. I like the shirt too. That's why I got it. The first week was very hot. I believe it was during a heat wave. I think it was for that reason that I started with a fairly large lead, but there were some drawbacks. On my first full day of Pokémon GO, I played all day, wearing shorts and no hat. And I definitely paid for my lack of outdoor experience. I got sunburned all over my face and neck, and also awful ones on the backs of my legs. I never wore shorts since that day, and I bought myself a straw hat from the dollar store. I came back equipped with spray sunscreen, and though I sprayed myself in the eye at one point, I was ready for the remainder of the summer. It's at this point in the story that I should mention that I live in Plymouth, Massachusetts. 394 years earlier, on Christmas Day of 1621, an incident occurred in this area in which people were, quote, gaming in the streets, instead of working that day, which was frowned upon. People got upset, and there was no gaming in the streets for quite a while after. These people who were upset were the Pilgrims, who have 20 million descendants, some of whom are interested in their ancestors. For that reason, individual Pilgrims are now famous people, and we know where some of their houses were, so Pokestops resulted, since each and every one of those houses is a landmark. In this way, there is a wonderful cycle of Pokestops which can be activated without crossing any streets, including the famous Plymouth Rock, which has 2 Pokestops from different angles. So, it's kind of ironic that some of the people who were angry that there was gaming in the streets, through their eventual fame, made it easier to game in those very streets. Although I don't think they were imagining electronic gaming. There are 2 locations where I work, and both of them are Pokestops. For this reason, I was always obtaining items, which is why I upgraded my item storage to the maximum. In augmented reality mode, you can make funny pictures, but the game is more difficult to play that way. When you catch a Pokémon in Go, you get 3 candies in the category of the basic Pokémon within the evolutionary family of the Pokémon you just caught. So if you catch a Pidgey, you get Pidgey candies. And if you catch a Pidgeotto or Pidgeot, you still get Pidgey candies. You also get 1 candy when you release a Pokémon, which is called transferring in this game. So the net gain per captured Pokémon is 4 candies. Those candies can be used to power up your Pokémon, or, more importantly in my opinion, to evolve them. There are several tiers of evolution. Pokémon require a certain amount of candies to evolve. Some of them require 12, others require 25, some require 50, 100, and a tier unto himself, Magikarp requires 400 candies to evolve. Luckily, Magikarp is a very common Pokémon in my town. If you're trying to level up, the best Pokémon you can catch are Pidgey, Weedle, and Caterpie. Those are the Pokémon that evolve, requiring only 12 candies. Why 12, you might ask? It is the rounded down version of 25 divided by 2. The real trick is to get a whole lot of them ready to evolve, and then use an item called a Lucky Egg, which doubles the amount of experience you get for 30 minutes. And then, in those 30 minutes, evolve as many of those Pokémon as you can. And that's what a lot of people did, and continue to do to try to get to level 40. In the first few days of my playing, I met someone who was already level 21, which was amazing at the time. My priority was collecting Pokémon, but I intended to catch up to him at some point. One thing I noticed was that Pokémon GO consumed my phone's battery power very quickly. So I invested in a $50 USB power bank from Amazon, so I could decrease my reliance on power sockets. The power bank I got was amazing. I could play Pokémon GO for more than 2 full days without the bank needing to be charged. Charging the bank, however, was somewhat of an ordeal. In the early parts of the game, there were a lot of glitches. For instance, one of the more annoying ones was that when you attacked a gym, sometimes the Pokémon wouldn't faint, even if it got to 0 HP. I joined Team Mystic, but my priority wasn't taking gyms or anything. It was definitely just catching the Pokémon. One day, Pokémon GO stopped working entirely because an online group overloaded the Pokémon GO servers with data requests. They said they did it so that nobody could play until Niantic set up servers that were more stable. And I guess that kind of makes sense, but it wasn't a very nice thing to do. A rogue Articuno was spotted in a gym somewhere. People were worried that someone found a way to cheat to create Pokémon. But that was not the case. As it turned out, a Niantic employee gave the person the Articuno without permission from the company. After news spread about it, it was retrieved. On a stormy night, I saw a Zapdos in the distance. I took this picture and sent it to the town's Pokémon Facebook group. They determined that I had photoshopped it. But still, I think we all took a break that night. It was kinda scary. A few times on a sunny day, with the help of my charger and a 10-minute car ride, my phone would surpass the safe temperature threshold. It still let me take a screenshot though, which is strange. People had their own theories about how Pokémon spawned. Among them, that ghost Pokémon spawn in graveyards. Those theories weren't always wrong. There was one day early on when I was scheduled to work from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. So, to keep up with my progress, I hatched a plan. I woke up at 4 a.m. to play before work. I found a wonderfully empty world, although a small group of players were still roaming the street when I arrived, which was funny because to them it was late, but to me, it was early. There was no hour that day that no one in town was playing. There are 151 Pokemon in Generation 1, but for some reason, when Pokemon GO started, you couldn't catch any of the legendaries, and also, Ditto wasn't in the game. So the maximum number that you could catch in the world was 145. It was discovered that there were regional exclusive Pokémon. You could catch Tauros only in North America. You could catch Kangaskhan only in Australia, Mr. Mime only in Europe, and Farfetch'd only in Asia. I had been hatching a lot of eggs to get the Pokémon that I had no idea how to find. I had hatched multiple Tauros, but no Kangaskhan, Mr. Mime, or Farfetch'd. For a while it was difficult to say whether you could get an egg from a Pokestop in your region that had a Pokémon in it from a different region, but it turned out that you can't. I did a little bit of research on the topic by searching Twitter with keywords like hatched and mime. And anyone tweeting about hatching Mr. Mime was always from Europe, and that's how I kind of found out. But it was later confirmed. They said that Pokemon trading was going to be implemented into the game. But with so many people cheating, I'm glad it wasn't. Since I have no plans to actually travel the world to catch Pokemon, I have to accept that my Pokédex in Pokémon GO will never be completed. But I can accept that. After all, I have filled the Pokédex in the main game. Walking around town over and over again, I noticed one spot that seemed to have a Mankey there more often than not. Mankey is not a common Pokemon in my area. That's an example of a Pokemon nest. The funny thing, though, is that I finally obtained enough Mankey candies to evolve Mankey into Primeape when I caught a Primeape. It was ironic, but that's how this game goes sometimes. At first you might see a Venonat and say, "Wow, a Venonat!" And then later on you'll find another one, and your response is, "Oh great, a Venonat." It was found that nicknaming an Eevee certain names will ensure a particular evolution once. I didn't quite believe the accounts of this happening weren't examples of confirmation bias, until I used the trick when Generation 2 came around, to get Espeon and Umbreon. I think it works if the Eevee evolution you want isn't in your Pokédex yet. If you want Eevee to evolve into Flareon, name the Eevee Pyro. For Jolteon, name it Sparky. For Vaporeon, Rainer, Espeon, Sakura, and Umbreon, Tamayo. Those names are from the Pokemon anime. They're all characters who had the evolution of Eevee in question. I have no idea what names might work later for Leafeon and Glaceon, but we don't have to worry about that for a while. Someone found the Gen 2 Eevee names fairly quickly, and we have Cerebi.net's anime dex to help us. Shortly after the reveal of Alola Executor, I evolved my Execute into regular Executor. After getting the last Abercandy I needed to evolve my Kadabra into Alakazam, I promptly sat under a tree and released my Kadabra. I was depressed about this for a while and made it my primary purpose to get Alakazam, and I eventually did. What would have fixed my problem is the introduction of a later feature called Favorite Pokemon. When you put a star next to your Pokemon and make it a favorite Pokemon, you are unable to release it unless you unfavorite it. If I had favorited my Kadabra, I wouldn't have accidentally released it. And so I'm really glad they added the favorite feature. At some point they made it possible to transfer multiple Pokemon at once, and that was very useful. For a while I had Grimer and 49 Grimer candies. I could have 50 Grimer candies if I released Grimer, but then I wouldn't be able to evolve Grimer into Muck. In that situation, the buddy system would have helped me a lot, but I'll get to that later. One time a dugong interrupted my lunch, and so I had to run away and get it. Lapras was one of those Pokemon people were usually trying to find. At one point, I found a Lapras at the end of a pier, and yelled real loud that it was there, and people came running, except one person, who walked because he had been duped earlier that day. Eggs come in 3 varieties. Eggs that take 2 kilometers of walking to hatch, some that take 5 kilometers of walking to hatch, and of course, some that take 10 kilometers of walking to hatch. You get them from Pokestops, and you put the egg inside of an incubator, and you walk around for that amount of distance, and then it hatches. And it gives you some candy, it gives you some experience, but more importantly, you get a Pokemon that could be kind of random. Usually the common Pokemon come from 2k eggs, the slightly uncommon ones come from 5k eggs, and the rare ones come from 10k eggs. Eggs that take 10 kilometers of walking to hatch are great, because not only are there rare Pokemon inside sometimes, but when they hatch they give you a lot of candy. For me, it was very helpful for Kabuto and Ammonite, because I never see those. At first, all the eggs looked the same, but then there was eventually an update that changed the colors of the eggs based on how much distance you had to walk with them in order to hatch them. I eventually evolved Dragonite. It wasn't too hard because of where I live, but it was a bit of a challenge. I caught a wild Gyarados once. It was pretty exciting, but I'd already evolved one. Slightly before the release of Pokémon GO, Pokémon Yellow, Red, and Blue had been released for the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console, and so I decided that while I was playing Pokémon GO, I would also play Pokémon Yellow in order to assemble a living Pokédex in the Gen 1 games. I played Yellow in English, Blue in Spanish, and Red in French, but they all traded with each other just fine. The language didn't seem to matter. Because there's no breeding in the game, I had to play the first few minutes of the game to get an extra Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander, although I think I got Charmeleon, Wartortle, and Ivysaur from Yellow. At the same time, we were getting more information about Pokemon Sun and Moon, so every so often I would say weird stuff like, "Oh wow, a fire Ninetales." So in Spanish Pokemon Blue, you go to the gym with an I. The Great Balls are called Super Balls, or Super Balls, but most Pokemon names in Spanish are the same in English. In French Red, Pokemon Rouge, I beat Pierre at the first Arn. Top cool, I caught some Pokemon, did some trading, then Salameche evolved into Charmeleon, changed the surname of my Dracafiu to Charizard, and there's a lot of weird Pokemon names in French, like Smogo, Smogogo, Nosferapti, Ratatak, Rhinocorn, Arcanine, Tortank, and Kickley. Just like in Spanish, the French Great Ball is a Super Ball, but French Ultra Balls are called Hyper Balls. The legendary birds are named after Thor, Odin, and Ra. I renamed all the Pokemon I needed to bring to Yellow after their English names. I beat Peter and his Dracolace, then defeated my rival Regis. Anyway, I filled my living decks in Yellow and put them in order. One day I woke up and the Pokemon tracker in the game had stopped working properly. Normally it would show 1 step if a Pokemon was close by, 2 if it was farther, and 3 if it was far away. But all Pokemon now showed 3 steps all the time. The tracker was working fine for other people, and they helped me find some rare Pokemon, but within a few days after, nobody had a working tracker. They eventually replaced tracking with something that works pretty well in places that have a lot of Pokestops, but I know a lot of people aren't very happy with it who live in rural areas. It was then that I discovered a third-party app called Pokevision. At the time, I had already captured about 123 Pokemon out of the 142 available in the Western Hemisphere. I was reluctant at first to use third-party scanning, but then I decided to go all in. After all, if someone else used the third-party scanners and led me to a rare Pokemon, I would be benefiting from the scanner anyway. I might as well use it efficiently. The thing about third-party Pokemon scanners is that they often have a very short shelf life. Niantic would try to stop them by changing the way the code works. The app creators would then adapt. It went back and forth like this, but sometimes there was no working scanners available. At one point, the scanner led me to a wild Dragonite which I caught downtown, but it wasn't on my normal path, so I definitely wouldn't have encountered it without the radar. I didn't need one, by the way, I already had a Dragonite, but it was pretty exciting. New Pokemon were becoming harder to find, so I shifted my attention to some of the medals. Those are kind of like the achievements of Pokémon GO. I figured that the Ace Trainer medal was important to get first, so I went to a level 10 gym at the edge of a graveyard and destroyed it to replace it with a Pidgey. To level up your Ace Trainer medal, what you do is you train at a gym continuously to make the gym stronger, or at least increase the level of the gym. By putting a Pidgey up there and making it easy to defeat all of the Pokemon in the gym, I was able to beat it many times in a short amount of time. In the graveyard, I leveled the gym pretty high. That was until someone came to break it down. It was nighttime, and I greeted the person from the shadows, congratulated him for defeating my Pidgey, and then left due to politeness. It is a game after all, and they did defeat that Pidgey. On the next day, the gym in the cemetery, I believe, was being contested, and so I took a gym near my old elementary school to train Pidgey. I guess a kid took it on his way home from school, and he seemed so pleased, so I didn't want to take the gym back, but I had to. So I waited until he left. I'm not happy about what I did, but I did need that medal. The Ace Trainer medal is now unable to be trained, so I'm kind of lucky. The reason it can't be trained is they changed the way that gyms work, and that happened maybe a few weeks ago, at the time of this recording. So you never know when medals will become unable to be completed, so it's good to prioritize them. The next medal I started working on was the one called Battle Girl. The objective is to defeat 1,000 Pokemon that are defending enemy gyms. I'm on Team Mystic, so I could only really attack gyms that were from the red or yellow teams. So when I did attack gyms, after I defeated the gym entirely, I didn't claim the gym for the blue team. Instead, I just waited for someone else to take the gym, and then defeated the Pokemon that replaced it. I could tell that sometimes gyms were being filled by people who weren't there. This is an example of spoofing, but it didn't matter to me at the time because those were just more Pokemon I could defeat. Waiting for people to take gyms for me to destroy, I read a lot of the Pokémon manga. One thing I can definitely say is that it's more mature than the TV show. It's interesting because it even had a reference to Hey You Pikachu for Nintendo 64. I'm looking forward to reading more Pokémon manga, but they haven't even released the Black 2 and White 2 chapters yet. They're still on Generation 5, while we're thinking about Generation 8 coming to Nintendo Switch. I think they should pick up the pace a little bit. My progress for destroying gyms was going pretty well, but I knew it could go faster with Nick's help. Nick and I would periodically monopolize a gym, with him taking over the gym continuously and me defeating the Pokemon he sent in continuously. He would have all of the weak Pokemon that he had defend the gym, before he would otherwise transfer them away. Now, there's a delay between the actual things that happen in the game and when they appear to happen. For that reason, I could tell Nick the exact time he was allowed to take the gym, while people who were trying to get into the gym to make our lives more difficult were having trouble. They've since changed the system to make it harder for something called gym sniping, which is taking a gym the moment it goes down, so the winner doesn't have enough time to put the new Pokemon in the gym. But in this case, I was benefiting because Nick kept gym sniping. Because my objective was to destroy as many Pokemon as possible. I didn't care about taking the gym itself. But I'm glad we did this before they made it difficult to gym snipe. All of a sudden, a side quest appeared in town, where a whole lot of painted lobsters started showing up. I went out and found a whole bunch of them. On the one near the dentist's office, there are 10 hidden toothbrushes. Here they are. There was one small park in town that appeared to be a Bulbasaur nest. Sometimes 2 Bulbasaurs would appear at once, but sometimes there'd be hours without any Bulbasaurs there. Since I needed a Venusaur, what I did was I camped out right at the nest, in the little park. Sometimes I would play Pokémon Yellow, and other times I would be reading Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child is just a play, but the play was written down and published as a book, so that people like me could read it without actually going to a play. It was exciting because it was new content from the Harry Potter universe, but it wasn't anywhere as good as the real 7 books. I found out later that J.K. Rowling did not really write the play, but unfortunately, it's still considered canonical. Meanwhile, someone else in town was getting pretty close to the 142 out of 145 regional maximum. They had almost caught all the Pokemon in the Western Hemisphere. But I wanted to catch up. I wanted to be the first person in town to do it. I made it my priority and stopped worrying about the medals. I was told to look for Geodudes in a place called Brant Rock. Unfortunately, cell phone service over there is not very good, but it's considered a different biome, with many more rock Pokemon appearing there than in Plymouth. There's also more fire and electric Pokemon there too. I caught some Geodudes, made some progress, but I knew the thing I had to do was go to Boston, because I knew there was a Charmander nest at the Museum of Science. Before going up to Boston, I researched the spawn points of Charmander, Geodude, and Ammonite, since those Pokemon would lead me to having enough candies for the last 3 Pokemon I needed. I used Boston's local scanning website called PokemonGoBoston.com, although I don't think it works anymore. When I was there, I just sat around the outside of the museum watching the scanner for Charmanders. It was pretty good. As it turned out, Lucky me, eggs that I had with me turned out to have Geodude and Ammonite, completing the candy I needed for those, and shifting my priority to catching Charmanders at the Museum of Science. One interesting thing is that the logo for the Museum of Science looks a bit like a Pokeball. And inside the gift shop, they were selling Pokemon stuff, and also spare batteries and chargers. I thought that was pretty smart. I also happened to get the Psychic Medal there while I was waiting. I caught my last Charmander, evolved my Charmeleon into Charizard, and took the train home. To my knowledge, I was the first in town to reach level 30 on August 9th, 1 week before I went to Boston to get the rest of the Pokemon. Getting to level 30 unlocks the max revive, but in effort and EXP, it's only 1/10 of the way to getting to level 40, which is the maximum. I still had a lot of work to do. I had an extra train ticket to Boston, so I went to a pretty active Pikachu nest at Christopher Columbus Park. Besides Pikachu, I caught some Magikarps, Jinx, Dratinis, and Voltorbs. I really liked the pier area. It's kind of a nice place. One tracking app I used had push notifications, which was great because it would let me know when Pokemon I wanted were nearby, so I wouldn't accidentally miss them. There were many mysteries surrounding the Pokémon GO Plus prior to its release. I ordered my Pokémon GO Plus from a GameStop near my school. I lugged a giant Disney Infinity box set to my car because it was on sale, although I haven't played it yet. As it turns out, if you try to catch a Pokemon using the button on the Pokémon GO Plus, it throws one Pokeball and then the Pokemon flees if it doesn't get caught that first time. It's annoying, but it's necessary, and sadly, it only uses Pokeballs. But it was a lot better than paying attention all the time to Pokemon Go. I could start doing other things while I also played. When you open the Pokemon Go Plus, it's in the form that you can clip it to something, but what I really wanted was the wrist strap. The wrist strap is included in the Pokemon Go Plus box, but you need a screwdriver to put it on. So I borrowed one from my math teacher, and essentially became a cyborg. The Pokemon Go Plus was great at work because, again, I work at a Pokestop. All I had to do was press the button on my wrist every 5 minutes or so, when it glowed blue and vibrated. And that would collect my items. I later found out that Colress does a similar thing in Sun and Moon. It just seems excessive to carry on doing that many button presses while maintaining eye contact and carrying on a conversation. But he's a scientist, I guess he knows what he's doing. The thing that was really annoying about the Pokemon Go Plus is that it would sometimes disconnect without telling me. Sometimes it wouldn't even know that it was disconnected, but it would still vibrate when pressed. So if a Pokemon shows up, it flashes green, and that's when you press the button, and sometimes it catches it, sometimes it doesn't. I was told that it could flash yellow when a Pokemon that I didn't have was within range, but as if that could happen to me in the Western Hemisphere. I eventually did see it light up yellow when Nick logged into his account on my phone because I had seen a Lapras, but I ruined it for him when I pressed it. I thought pressing the button when it was yellow would start the battle, but it acts just like pressing it when it's green, so it just throws a Pokeball, and if it doesn't get in the first time, it just flees. And of course, you're not going to catch a Lapras on your first Pokeball, so unfortunately it ran away. Pokemon Go Plus was most useful while driving, which is strange considering they don't want people driving while playing. Disclaimers had started appearing, saying things like, "Do not trespass while playing Pokemon Go," "Do not drive while playing Pokemon Go," "Do not play in dangerous areas," etc. And a prompt that had a button that says, "I'm a passenger," started appearing. Not only when you were in a car, but also when the game thought you were going too fast because it just didn't know where you were. Sometime after the release of the Pokemon Go Plus, Niantic implemented a speed limit for Pokemon appearing. If you were going 20 miles per hour or more, Pokemon would just stop appearing. People were mad about this because kids could no longer play the game in the backseat of their parents' car. I know people still do it, but I would recommend not playing Pokemon Go in your car. Just like the Pokewalker, the Pokemon Go Plus uses a CR2032 battery, so I had plenty of those. It doesn't work on real animals though, but I sort of expected that. The Pokemon Go Plus helped me in many ways, but in some ways it felt sort of like a shackle. I imagined that when I reached level 40, it would magically break off and fall into the snow. Of course, I don't think it's going to be winter when I reach level 40. But who knows? Thanks to climate change, it can snow any time of year now. I beat Final Fantasy 1 while I let my Pokémon GO Plus do most of the work in Pokémon GO. It was good and I reached level 33. Also, here's my face. So at some point they implemented the buddy system, which I mentioned earlier. Basically, you could assign a specific Pokemon to be your buddy. It wouldn't walk on the map, but when you looked at your character, it would be next to you. After going a certain distance, it would give you a candy of that Pokemon. This is very useful for Pokemon you don't know how to find, but you still need candies for. When the game started, there were 17, but now there are 18 specific type medals. So if you catch 200 fire Pokemon, you get the golden fire medal. 200 water Pokemon gets you the water medal. 200 grass Pokemon, the grass medal, and so on. Suddenly those medals became useful in just the casual playing of the game, because all of a sudden they introduced capture bonuses. When you throw a Pokeball at a Pokemon, if you have the medal of that type, you have a slightly higher chance that the Pokeball will work and not fail. This provided a real incentive to reach 200 of each type. Type bonuses would be quite useful, I thought, especially considering how the Pokémon GO Plus catches Pokemon. All of a sudden, a Halloween event was announced, in which you would get double candy for catching Pokemon. There was a new loading screen, and Ghost Pokemon and Ground Pokemon started appearing way more often. I used this opportunity to get the Ghost Medal and the Ground Medal. Also, it was around this time that I finished Final Fantasy II. They introduced something called daily bonuses for catching Pokemon and going to Pokestops. Basically, you would get a increasingly better reward every day you didn't miss catching a Pokemon that day or spinning a Pokestop. On the 7th day, you'd get your best reward, and then it would start over with the first day again. I didn't do this, but combining the bonus given for every 10 unique Pokestop spins with the bonus given for the first Pokestop of the day on the day of your 7th day streak can be pretty crazy. Another thing that was happening was the rotation of nests. So every 2 weeks, a nest that had a certain type of Pokemon would change to be a different nest. The nest would stay the same, but the Pokemon in the nest would change. In town, we had some pretty good nests at the beginning. There was one for Squirtle, Pinsir, Magmar, Hitmonlee, Growlithe, and Bulbasaur. Apparently, we may have even had a Dratini nest before they decided that Dratinis don't get nests anymore. I kinda wish I caught some more Dratinis back then, because Dragon is the last medal I still need for the type bonuses. Pokemon GO proved to be somewhat of a distraction to my completion of my Pokemon Sun and Moon quest. But you'll hear about that later in my video about it, the America Quest 2. So since there were nest changes every 2 weeks, the Facebook group I was a part of started keeping track of all the local ones. On a cold day the week before Thanksgiving, I went to Boston again and caught a ton of Mankeys. Well, technically more like 4 tons, assuming the following things: that a Mankey on average weighs 61.7 pounds, and that 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. I caught almost 150 and used the candies to evolve the Primeapes I needed to finish the fighting medal. My legs were in extreme pain after that endeavor, but it was worth it. So then, the Thanksgiving event started. For the entire week, everyone got double experience points. It was kinda sad because I didn't know it would be coming. I would have saved my Pokemon that could have evolved. I resolved to save my Pokemon for the next double EXP event. On Thanksgiving, I had a long day at work involving driving a golf cart around. Luckily, around this time, there was a lot of Fairy-type Pokemon, so I got a pretty good boost on my Fairy medal. The Facebook group found a nest of Charmanders at the Cape Cod Canal, so I spent a little bit of time completing my Fire-type medal. At one point, Ditto finally made its appearance. Disguised as a weak Pokemon like Pidgey, upon the capture of Pidgey, you would find out you had caught a Ditto. It was funny the first few times, but now it's kind of annoying, because I don't really want Ditto candies. I prefer the Pidgey candies, as I explained earlier. One time I caught a Dragonite near my school. I also finally got the medal for walking 1,000 kilometers. I didn't actively go after that one because I knew it would happen eventually. Sponsored Pokestops started appearing at Starbucks locations and Sprint stores. Starbucks apparently invented a Pokemon Go themed drink, but I never had it. It involved raspberries. I mean raspberries. So at some point they introduced baby Pokemon from Johto. So certain Pokemon that evolve into Kanto Pokemon could be captured, sort of. You couldn't find them out in the wild, but you could hatch them. In this way they introduced Magby, Elekid, Smoochum, Igglybuff, Cleffa, Pichu, Togepi, and Togetic. We knew that Tyrogue wasn't in the game yet because in the Pokédex there were silhouettes for all the baby Pokemon, but not for Tyrogue. At the time, they didn't have any way to branch Pokemon evolution except randomly in the case of Eevee. So I get why Tyrogue wasn't introduced yet. I hatched all of the baby Pokemon, but to get Togetic, you need 50 Togepi candies. I got a few of the candies from the first egg I hatched, but for the rest of them, I had to obtain them somehow. So what I did is I made Togepi my buddy, and then I walked around trying to hatch more Togepi eggs, but unfortunately I never hatched another Togepi before getting the candies I needed purely from walking. When I finally captured Togetic, it was the third time that I caught up to all of the Pokemon obtainable in the Western Hemisphere. The second one being catching Ditto. In Generation 1, catching ice Pokemon is kinda difficult because really there's only Jynx and maybe a few things that evolve into ice Pokemon. So when we found a Jynx nest on the Cape Cod Canal, I took full advantage of it, going down there all day for one day and then part of the day for the next. It was kinda cold down there, but I got my ice medal and then went home and that was good. The only Steel-type Pokemon in Generation 1 are from the Magnemite family. I found that there was an incredible Magnemite nest at Logan Airport, so I took public transportation there, and in less than a day I got my medal. The next day, I went up to Quincy, to a place called Nut Island, and there I caught a whole bunch of Kabutos. I did this so I could get the rock medal, because the nest up there is pretty big, and by the end of the day I got the rock medal too. The Christmas event started with a new loading screen featuring Santa Hat Pikachu. For the Christmas event, all wild Pikachus started wearing Santa hats. To me, the important thing about this was that for the weeks surrounding Christmas, Pikachu's spawn rate increased by a good amount. At the time, the hardest medal in my opinion to gold was the Pikachu medal, because although Pikachu is popular, Niantic made it a fairly uncommon Pokemon to come across. And you needed to catch 300 to get the golden Pikachu medal. And so I started Operation Christmas Miracle. It's pretty great that when a Santa Pikachu evolves, you get a Santa Raichu. But because these forms are not in the real Pokemon games, the rumor about transferring Pokemon out of Go seemed to fall flat. Here's a picture of Santa Pikachu by his throne. Here's Pikachu doing a sick move. I tried to find Pikachus downtown, but they just really weren't appearing for me. But the moon did look cool that day, so here's a picture of the moon. I found that Pikachus were spawning fairly regularly across the vast parking lots near Walmart and inside Walmart too. A few times I spent my entire day at the mall. And while I was doing it, I was watching anime episodes of Pokemon X and Y, using the Netflix app, which now allows you to download episodes onto your phone, so you can watch them offline. There are some really sad episodes, and I hear Sun and Moon's anime has more. It should be interesting to watch. Using my tracking app to know where to go, I caught maybe on average 20 Pikachus per 5 hours, or something like that. That's pretty good considering that Pikachu is far more rare outside of this event. I got my 300th small rat while I was there. It was good, but I wasn't done. I wanted to reach the capture of my 300th Pikachu during this event. The new year started with a new Pokémon GO loading screen featuring the baby Pokémon. There was some kind of starter Pokémon event going on, but I was still very much focused on the Pikachu medal. The Christmas event had been extended into the first week of 2017. I caught my last Pikachu at Home Depot, and it was mission accomplished for Operation Christmas Miracle. Suddenly Pikachu became much less important to me. It was fun to see it, along with the other starters, but I wasn't chasing them anymore. My priority was getting Togepi candy. In this endeavor, I got to level 36. My Ubisoft lanyard broke, but I had my replacement ready from the Pokémon Sun and Moon Midnight release. Another cell phone game, Mario Run, came out. I got it, but I haven't beaten it yet. I just wanted to mention here that I started it. I was also playing a bit of Fire Emblem Heroes. The redeeming factor in a lot of these Nintendo smartphone games is that they're short, so you can get to playing the console versions after. A game called Pokémon Duel came out, and it's pretty interesting. It's basically a digital version of the Pokémon trading figure game, but it has a story. The objective is to win a skyscraper. In my opinion, the story was getting very dramatic when all of a sudden I get to a cliffhanger that has apparently been there since May 2016. I hope they finish the story someday. Here are my EX figures. Also, here are my 5-star characters I got in Fire Emblem Heroes. Here's a weird Raichu glitch, and a Staryu. Oh, here's Caterpie too. This game has weird glitches. After I reached level 37, rumors started swirling that the beginning of Generation 2 proper would be starting soon. In the code, people found the Johto Pokemon and a new medal for unknown catching, presumably as an equivalent to the unknown Pokedex in Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Getting all 26 or 28 unknowns would presumably result in the Gold Unknown medal. The Valentine's Day event had a surplus of pink Pokemon, but what I especially liked was the 6-hour lure modules. So there are items called lure modules that take a Pokestop, and usually when you use a lure module, it spouts Pokemon for about 30 minutes. But during this event, the same item would spout them out for about 6 hours, which is pretty good. The Valentine event was extended for another day, so I continued using the 6-hour lure modules at the mall. Finally, an update came out that let me take my shoes off, and also changed the battle menus a little bit. So, I was in the mall, minding my own business, when all of a sudden, Murkrow showed up. Generation 2 was here. At some point, catching 2nd and 3rd evolution Pokemon started resulting in more candy being obtained. Pidgey still gave 3 candies, Pidgeotto started giving 4, and Pidgeot started giving 5. This made a bigger difference when they introduced Pineapple Berries. If used before the throw that catches the Pokemon, the Pineapple Berry doubles the amount of candies obtained. The net result of catching a Pidgey using a Pineapple Berry was a gain of 7 candies. For Pidgeotto, the gain would be 9, and for Pidgeot, the gain was 11. But because Johto Pokemon started appearing everywhere now, I had a lot of work to do. A wave of nostalgia approached us when login issues returned, because a good amount of people who stopped playing the game came back because of all the Johto Pokemon. And so it was kind of a glitchy mess for a little while. I had all the candy I needed in preparation for Generation 2, but my anticipated head start on Johto was halted by the sudden requirement to have evolution items to evolve some of the older Pokemon into their new evolution paths. The problem was that evolution items are incredibly rare drops from Pokestops. In the long run, it's a good thing that they're so rare, but for a while it was annoying. They eventually made it so that a 7-day streak for spinning Pokestops would guarantee at least one evolution item. I eventually got all of the evolution items I needed, both King's Rocks, both Metal Coats, both Sunstones, a Dragon Scale, and an upgrade. I'm glad they extended the 6-hour lure modules into the beginning of Johto, because I was able to catch some interesting stuff at work, like Octillery and Skarmory. I ran into an actual wild Togetic, but even using an Ultra Ball, its catch rate was minuscule. I heard it was at about 1%, so needless to say, it ran away. They've since made it easier to catch Togetic if you find it. I caught Donphan, then Phanpy, Azumarill, then Marill, and plenty of other Pokemon in a fairly short amount of time. I only found one single Slugma, but because it only takes 1 kilometer to get a candy when it's your buddy, I made it my buddy and I got the rest of the candies I needed to evolve it. It ended up being a pretty weak Magcargo though. To evolve Espeon and Umbreon without using the name trick, it involves walking an Eevee as your buddy for 10 kilometers, and then evolving it while it's still your buddy. Of course, I just used the name trick, but that only works for your first Espeon and Umbreon. When you hatch a Tyrogue, you can appraise it, and your team leader will tell you its best stat. If the best stat is attack, it's going to evolve into Hitmonlee when you evolve it. If its best stat is defense, it'll turn into Hitmonchan. And if its best stat is HP, it results in the evolution of Hitmontop. And so I eventually got a Tyrogue with a HP stat that was really high, and it got me Hitmontop. As it turned out, because of Johto, there were 2 more regional exclusives. Heracross can only be found in South America and all the way north into southern Florida and Texas. Corsola can be found near the equator in between these lines. Delibird and Smeargle aren't in the game, and I presume it's because of their signature moves. Niantic needed to decide what Transform did before releasing Ditto. They need to decide how the moves Sketch and Present work now. Until they do that, there's very little chance of Generation 3 appearing, which is good, because I need some more time. What I found interesting is that when Generation 2 started, the cost to evolve Zubat to Golbat dropped from 50 candies to 25. The Zubat candies that I'd saved gained value. The only problem is I can't find enough Zubats to use them up. Right now, the cost to evolve Magnemite, Rhydon, Porygon, Togepi, and Swinub is 50 candies. But I imagine that it's going to drop down to 25 when Generation 4 hits. Because all of a sudden it's going to be a 3-stage Pokemon. It's remotely possible that Chansey's and Meryl's costs to evolve will increase when their baby forms show up, but I'm not so sure about that. One time I ran into a Dunsparce on my way to the mall restroom. This was the only time my Pokémon GO Plus flashed yellow while I was logged into my own account. This is the springtime loading screen featuring Steelix. For Pokémon Red and Green's 21st anniversary, Pokémon Day, Pokémon GO had a week-long event where Pikachus with party hats would appear, much like how the Santa Pikachus would appear around Christmas. I was able to catch a few of those at the mall, along with the remainder of the Murkrows I needed for the Dark-type medal, just in time for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild's midnight release. I set off on my journey into Hyrule, and, in that way, kind of neglected Pokémon GO for a little while. I like Nintendo Switch because it has some pretty serious games, but it's also completely portable. I brought it with me everywhere I went. So the Water Festival started. For the first hour or so, there were a lot of Dratinis, and it's a shame I missed it because I still needed my gold Dragon-type medal, and I still do. A lot of Magikarps were everywhere that week, and I would have gone after the Fisherman medal, but I was playing Breath of the Wild. For that event, the first shiny Pokemon became possible to obtain in Pokémon GO. That is, Golden Magikarp. I didn't find one during the event though, but luckily you can still catch Golden Magikarp. It's just there are less Magikarps now, so the chance of running into one is lower. I didn't encounter this myself, but people were seeing the Substitute doll as a placeholder asset on top of gyms sometimes. So when the Easter event showed up, called the Extravaganza, it was a double EXP event. And so what I did was I had all the Pokemon I had saved, and I evolved Pokemon for basically 4 straight hours using Lucky Eggs. It was a good experience boost, but then I took the rest of the week off. I'm pretty sure I was still playing Breath of the Wild. On the Facebook group, we discovered a nest of Cyndaquil, and luckily it was on my way to and from work, so I eventually got my Typhlosion. One day I went back to Quincy because there was a Chikorita nest on Nut Island. I listened to audiobooks of Sherlock Holmes, and on my way back, I took the wrong train. Luckily, I still found a way back home. On my graph, that's the day I played Breath of the Wild the least. Sometime after I beat Breath of the Wild, there was a Totodile nest downtown, so within a few hours of waiting, I had all of the Totodile candy I needed to evolve Croconaw into Feraligatr. I discovered a nest near my work at the beach, and there was a Girafarig there, and so I caught it. 2 weeks later, it became a nest for Shuckle, so I caught that as well. We found a Houndour nest in a different part of town, and so I went there one day and got enough to get Houndoom. And eventually I hatched enough Mareeps and Larvitars to get Ampharos and Tyranitar. Now, technically, Unknown's available everywhere in the world, but it is so rare that you're more likely to run into a wild Tyranitar than it is to run into an Unknown. And of course, there's 26 different Unknowns. 28 if you're counting the ones introduced in Generation 3. That's why I think they're eventually going to have an Unknown Festival or increase the spawn rate of Unknown. Some of my friends actually did catch an Unknown at Brant Rock, but I still haven't found one. And so I am still technically not caught up. But as soon as I catch an Unknown, presumably, I'll have all of them available in New England. So, there was another event called the Worldwide Bloom, which increased the spawn rates for Grass-type Pokemon. It was pretty good. More importantly, though, the minimum number of items per Pokestop spin was increased to 4. So it was a really good time to collect items. I went downtown and stocked up. I don't think the event was as long as a week, but during the event there were still 6-hour lure modules, so I did use those at work as well. So then, after the Bloom Festival, there was Adventure Week. During Adventure Week, there was a lot more rock Pokemon. What Niantic wanted to do was encourage physical activity, so what they did was they increased the candy reward for the amount of distance traveled with your buddy. So what I did was I took a lot of Pokemon that I knew would eventually evolve in Sinnoh or Generation 4, and I went on walks. And I made it so that I had at least 100 candy for each Pokemon that would eventually evolve in Generation 4. I don't know how much candy is going to be required, but with the exception of Magikarp, no Pokemon needs more than 100 candy to evolve. I wonder if Feebas is going to need 400 candies. I guess we won't know until sometime next year. I also found a Misdrevious nest, and took advantage of that as well, and that is part of the reason why I was able to obtain 100 candies of each eventual Sinnoh evolution. More recently, there was a thing called the Fire and Ice Solstice event, celebrating both the winter and summer solstice, because they happen at the same time but in different hemispheres. One's in the northern hemisphere, the other's in the southern hemisphere. So during this event, there was an increased number of fire Pokemon and ice Pokemon appearing. But what really made this event amazing is that you got triple the experience for catching Pokemon and throwing the Pokeball well. So, I'm no longer the highest level player in my town. There are 2 people who I know have higher levels than I do. One person reached level 40 before the Solstice event started, and one reached level 40 during the Solstice event. There was a possibility that I could fall way behind. So what I did was I took some drastic measures. I started spending all my free time downtown during the event catching Pokemon, while I rendered footage for the Crystal Quest, coming summer 2017. So Lucky Eggs had a discount during the event, and that is why I decided to pretty much, whenever I was playing, to have a Lucky Egg going. When I was in the downtown area, I caught a lot of Magikarps, getting myself closer to the Fisherman Medal. I even caught a golden Magikarp and evolved it into Red Gyarados. On what I thought was the last day of the Solstice event, I went to town at 2 a.m. and I played until 3 p.m. What I figured out is that you usually have 2 chances to get at least 900 EXP per Pokemon, assuming you have a Lucky Egg activated. The first thing you do is you try to catch a Pokemon the normal way. If you don't catch it on your first try, what I do is I go back out of the battle and I use the Pokémon GO Plus. When you catch a Pokemon on your first throw, you get a bonus. And during this event, that bonus was pretty significant because it was tripled, or actually, with the Lucky Egg, it was multiplied by 6. But failing to catch it with your first Pokeball doesn't affect the score you get if you catch it on your first attempt with the Pokémon GO Plus. For that entire last day, I was taking full advantage of that oversight. I don't think they've fixed it, but I don't think they necessarily have to. I got a lot of experience points in a short amount of time, but I still have a ways to go. Had I spent more time downtown during the early days of the event, I might have been level 40 by now. But new features started appearing just in time for the 1-year anniversary of Pokémon GO. Before they changed over the gym system, all of the gyms closed. And one of those gyms was the Pokestop that I rely on. Because for some reason, the Pokestop I always use at work turned into a gym. And so I went for a few days without a Pokestop at my work. But then gyms came back, and now gyms are Pokestops. Unfortunately, the Pokemon Go Plus doesn't consider them Pokestops yet. Hopefully they'll make it so that the blue button flashes and then I can collect items. Now that all gyms are Pokestops, I would love the ability to lure gyms using a lure module. The new gyms can only hold 6 Pokemon, but from my understanding the gyms fall faster than before. So when a raid battle happens, an egg appears at the top of a gym, and the color of the egg denotes how difficult it's going to be. The pink eggs are the easy ones. Those are the ones I can do by myself. But then there's the yellow ones, which are slightly harder. Technical machines changed the move of your Pokemon, and now you can obtain them in raid battles. There is now a better working Raspberry, which you can also win from raid battles. Pokemon raids tend to give you 2 hours notice, and then it gives you an hour to defeat the raid. Unfortunately, after you defeat a raid, for the rest of the hour that the raid's available, you are unable to get items from the gym. And I really think they should fix that. In the raid update, Pokeballs now have brighter colors. But they also added several medals. The Gym Leader medal, the Berry Master medal, the Champion medal, and in the code there's a Legendary Raid medal. The Gym Leader medal is interesting. It reminds me a little bit about one of my previous quests, the Max Run, where I essentially just left my game on for 1,000 hours. This is similar, but a little bit more involved. The idea is you're supposed to take gyms, and while the gym is taken, you get points towards your Gym Leader medal. You could either keep a gym for 1,000 hours, or keep several gyms for less time. And all the time that you're in a gym counts towards the 1,000 hours. That's not going to take too long because I actually work near several gyms that people don't normally attack. The Berry Master medal should be easy as well. The objective is to feed 1,000 berries to ally Pokemon in gyms. Right now, I'm not prioritizing it because I know it will happen by itself in my pursuit of the Gym Leader medal. Unfortunately, the Champion medal is ridiculous because to get the gold, you have to win 1,000 raids. And sadly, you only get 1 raid pass per day for free. Otherwise, they cost about $1, and that's way too much money for a medal, in my opinion at least. My best shot may be playing raids casually for about 3 more years, or waiting for some kind of discount off of premium raid passes. If they gave us more than 1 free raid pass per day, it would change my expected completion of the medal from 3 years to 1.5. Who knows how this game is going to look 3 years from now? That's why I think they should be giving raid passes more frequently. You can now collect gym badges, although there are probably 1 million of them. Gym badges keep track of your involvement with all of the gyms that you interact with. You can level up your gym badge to bronze, silver, and gold. What I do like about the gyms is that they give you more items when you spin them than Pokestops, if the rank of your gym is high. And what I would really like is that gym that I have at work to be a golden badge. I'm still hoping for an unknown event, and if there is one, I'll try to complete the unknown medal. I have to accept that there are parts of Pokemon Go that I may not be able to complete. The regional exclusives, and possibly some of the new medals. I'm not the very best, like no one ever was, but I'm among their ranks. I'm happy that I'll be able to reach level 40, and that I caught most of the Pokemon in my region, and that I have most of the medals. They say that the legendary raid passes are going to be difficult to obtain. There's supposedly a Mewtwo event going to happen very soon in Japan. I don't care too much about legendary Pokemon, but if they show up, I'll try my best to catch them. On the last hour of the first year of Pokemon Go, I was working on editing this very video when I noticed a silhouette on my radar. The silhouette was that of the special Pikachu that was released for the anniversary. I went to catch it and it was wearing Ash's hat. I then evolved it, and then later on I caught some more Pikachus with Ash's hat. I then found out it was possible to hatch a Pichu with Ash's hat, and so I went and did that. I did that within the first week of the second year of Pokemon Go. And that concludes everything that has happened so far. As enjoyable as this year has been, I hope that year 2 is somewhat less eventful. I have some real video games to beat. I'll see you in the next video. Just remember, we all live in a Pokémon world.